Salutations, podcast world, and welcome once again to Bitcoin Magazine's Weekly Bits podcast, where our editorial staff discusses some of the most engaging and important stories on our news site. My name is Peter Chihuaga, senior editor at Bitcoin Magazine, and today is a special episode because I am joined by Graham Peterson, our resident video and podcast producer. Graham, I wanted to bring you in because you produce video reviews of Bitcoin-related products for our YouTube channel. You've done a couple of unboxing / reviews that are on there and posted to our main news site as well. For any listeners out there who haven't seen these videos, you can find Bitcoin Magazine's YouTube channel, or you can search the term video on our news website. How's it going, Graham?
It's going good. Thanks for having me, Peter.
Thank you very much for coming. As I said, feels like a special episode because in the past we've only really discussed purely editorial kind of written articles, but we have this whole other kind of element to what Bitcoin Magazine is, which is the video and audio content that we're doing. Remind me on some of the video products you've made to date.
So far, we've been doing this for a couple months now. We've done Shift Crypto's Bitbox 02. We did CoinKite's CoinCard MK3. We did the Ledger Nano X, and we've done some others as well, and we got some more coming down the pike here pretty soon. So I don't want to spoil them all right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what's the process look like? You're getting in touch with manufacturers of some of the actual merchandise, for the most part to this point, hardware wallets that we feel like our readers want to see as close to in person as possible, want to see someone actually use, and then give a sense of like, is this item right for you? Is that like a fair summary?
I think sometimes that's true. But being under, the Bitcoin Magazine umbrella, people have sent us a lot of free stuff as well, just to say like, we'd love for you guys to take a look at this. And I think that we were getting that sort of stuff even before we started doing the videos. So it was like we had sort of a pile of new wallets, just sitting over on a desk. We're like, hey, we should do something with this. So I think it's a mix of both. After the video started coming out, some more people actually started reaching out to us. So there's some incoming stuff that way. And then we like to reach out to people that we think are pretty cool too.
Right. And, as any returning listeners will know, this is a pretty editorially focused podcast. So whenever I think about doing a video review of a Bitcoin related product, I think about kind of the challenges in doing a written review of that. We've done a bunch here. I've written one for, it was Why Bitcoin Magazine, one of our other products. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking like, that I have to go through do I have to actually put Bitcoin onto this hardware wallet? Do I have to set up a recovery seed phrase every time? Like, right. How much do I have to experience the wallet myself to kind of write it? Is that the same challenge on video, or do you feel like it's different?
Absolutely. As you were describing that, I realized making these that I was learning so much about them. I have to give a big shout out to our coworker, Michael Tyberg. He actually does a lot of the writing for the reviews. And he's sort of like our, whiz kid here. He knows everything about all the wallets and everything. So like I sort of piggyback off of him and just kind of trust in him that he knows what he's talking about. And in the process, I learn a lot too.
Well, yeah. And one thing I think you really are driving is how those videos look, the shoot. I think it's probably maybe drawn from other experience shooting products, and this is kind of one of those. But maybe take me through a little bit of that thinking and like what you're trying to accomplish video-wise, not just explaining the wallets, as you say, Michael does a great job doing, but like shooting them in a way that's interesting for the viewer, that maybe gives them more information, makes them feel like, you shoot them so nicely that I wouldn't be surprised if lots of viewers come away thinking like, oh, this is pretty dope. Like I got to get one of these just from the product shots and stuff like that.
Right. Well, I think my goal ultimately is for the viewer to not think about it. If you go in and you're focusing more on the product and, glaring video mistakes weren't sticking out or bad audio, that's a win for me. So I appreciate the compliment there. But to really explain that process, we need to go back to 1988. I hadn't been born yet. No, I'm kidding. No, yeah, like I appreciate it. Again, I think it's just all about trying to make it seamless as possible. And I think the same goes for, an article that resonates with people. You don't necessarily think about the writing because you're just consumed in actually reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the fact, you're like, hey, that was like really well written. And maybe I'm off base there with you being a writer.
No, that definitely sounds like the same kind of process.
Yeah. But, a little bit of lights and some audio equipment can go a long way. So
yeah, the one Bitcoin specific thing that makes me think of is like the reporting can get kind of clunky and in the way, especially with the product review thing, because the products are like probably more complicated to use than products in other sectors. Mm-hmm. Readers really it's really important to protect your keys through a hardware wallet, for instance. And so I think readers or viewers really care that you've kind of done your due diligence to explain how to do that and like the privacy and security features. So I just, in my opinion, it might have different challenges than reviewing a TV show or a movie, which I have the utmost respect for how complicated that can be. But I'm just saying it's a different process. And I would think that would translate to video reviews just as much as written ones.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of overlap. Obviously you're spot on. Those are two different beasts. But I think the most important thing is letting, again, I got to give Michael a lot of credit because he's the guy who just knows all the details. So I kind of try to toe the line of letting him be the personality and be the person showing the product while sort of also towing the line of like, well, we got to hit these boxes here. So I think there's probably a lot of similarities with like a movie like script and letting your actors sort of like just influence it themselves, but you got to step in here and there. So
yeah, and I think with writing too, I think maybe the best thing you need to start with is somebody who really does, have expertise around Bitcoin security and privacy and the things that, you have to be able to trust them to sort of know that stuff. Sure. and translate it for viewers or readers.
It's a team effort.
Mm-hmm. But I know I keep harping on like the Bitcoin hardware wallets, which there have been several reviews of those. That's just kind of what comes to my mind first when I think of like Bitcoin merch that you could shoot a video or review, but we've done some other stuff too, right?
Yeah, we shot a review for the CoinMine. I guess you could sort of call that an unboxing because we actually did unbox it. Say what you will about the CoinMine. It's a good-looking product, and it was fun to review. But we also did one for a Start to Bitcoin starter box, which is sort of like, I don't know, like a deck of cards that you would see at I remember Spencer's Gifts. Like it seems like something you could find there, but the cards just had all these different facts and quotes and just like jokes and stuff all about Bitcoin. And it was meant for, maybe giving to your brother or maybe your dad, but because everything's like done in this like 50s comic book style and all the cards, and it's just a beautiful product. So it was actually really fun to shoot because there's so many colors popping off of the screen. But then on the back end, it's like, oh, this is actually a really good product for adoption. And it's kind of disguised as a fun little like comic booky thing. And those are the products that really resonate with me. Plus, I think they gave you $5 in Bitcoin in the box and everything.
Yeah, I should have shouted this out earlier. Any listeners out there who are wanting swag, probably the best way to do it is to just start a media company and promise people views and information about your product. And,
right.
They'll send you free stuff.
Oh, sure. That actually happened for my dog. We have an Instagram account for him, and people started hitting us up to like take pictures with him with like, their collars and stuff like that. But they made you buy him at like a discounted rate, but it's just funny. Yeah. Like everybody's trying to do like, well, I'll start the influencer thing. I'll start my own media thing, but yeah.
I have the side hustle.
That's right.
But the dog Instagram intersection, not saying that you're like this, but my impression of it is lots of people become weird, like stage parents where like they're putting their dog in photos and costumes and whatnot. And frankly, the dog would rather just be running around free of that photo shoot.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that when I lived in LA because it was sort of like that's when we really started doing it a few years ago. We've since not posted for like a year. We're just we're like whatever. We don't want to do it anymore. But we did see a lot of that, and even worse than that are people who have Instagram accounts for their kids.
Yeah,
and we saw a lot of parents like trying to stage their kids up. Like it was just It was a bad thing.
Yeah.
So please don't do that. But if you're getting like free clothes for your kid, I guess it's ultimately a good thing. But
here, all that we're shooting and influencing about our Bitcoin merchandise products. Right. So nobody's harmed in the filming of our videos. No. When you are shooting so much Bitcoin merch, I mean, you alluded to some of the products, that particularly resonated with you. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about kind of the technical difficulties of doing that, but what's your kind of overall take on the Bitcoin merch scene? Because I have some opinions, and it's grown a lot since I've kind of like been paying attention to what kind of swag and actual useful merch you can get. And then Bitcoin Magazine's parent company, BTC, has an actual store. We sell some of the products.
I think we're selling all of them on there.
Okay, that's reviewed.
Store.b.tc.
Of course, that doesn't influence the review outcome at all.
And we always shout like the products website as well. So it's not a gimmick to try to get people to just go to the store. So,
but do you have any kind of bigger 10,000-foot view takes on like just the Bitcoin crypto merch scene?
I honestly, so I just got into Bitcoin a little over a year ago. Like I'd always kind of known it was there, but I just didn't really like swallow the pill until, about a year ago. And I was just blown away by how many products were out there because it's such a nuanced crowd. And to have like just this plethora of material coming out and like all these different wallets, it's like I've been using my Trezor since day one, and it took me a few months to realize that there were like 12 other options for it.
Yeah, that's one of my takeaways too. I think my theory is like the intersection of people who are into Bitcoin and people who want to like make their own products or like entrepreneurs or like super creative people. It's just that intersection so big that all these Bitcoiners are just like, I have a cool idea, and then they go make it happen and offer it. But I've seen, it's been a big explosion for sure. I feel like in the last couple of years of just so many like products.
Yeah. I mean, I think the silver lining there is that the user experience is getting better and better. So it's good to have options. And I think it's just making everybody compete and make them become more lean and smarter. So ultimately, I think it's a good thing. But I'm still blown away by how many products we have even on the back end to shoot here. So
And one thing I have been hesitant to talk about on this episode would be to dive into any review specifically. That kind of comes from my editorial experience, that if I was to give any kind of TLDR or like quick summary of the, Michael reviewed the privacy capabilities of so-and-so product, then that'd be like the main takeaway. And if it was positive, someone would get mad. If it was negative, someone would get mad. So I'm going to try to avoid, you'll have to watch the videos, which I think do a more nuanced and complete job.
Yeah.
But that's a huge challenge. Even to come up with a summary of a video or like a ranking system, like do you do that? Don't you do that? You just try to be fair to everybody, I guess.
I mean, outside of just being, Bitcoin proponents, I think we try to make it applicable to as many people as we can. As you were mentioning, opinions can become very severed in this space. So it's like, listen, we're going to give you an honest review of this. We're not going to try to shill it in any way. This is just what we think of it. If you like it, awesome. Give us a like and keep watching. If you don't, then don't watch it.
Right.
That's how I feel about most things.
If only it were that easy. But that's definitely what you go for. And then I in addition to shooting the product reviews, as you've been doing, you have turned at least one or two of our in-house podcasts into a video. What kind of, and that is, there's a million questions to follow up with on there. But the one I'm going to lead with here is like what I'd think would be, all right, there's already kind of a challenge to film a podcast because it's kind of like just us two sitting right here in the studio going back and forth.
Right.
But you've made the Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour podcast shoot like, there's a scene, there's a setup. I know there's thinking behind like what that's like for a viewer, making it as interesting as possible. But then at the end of the day, and this is something we struggle with over at the news site too, you got to kind of like condense what could become really technical, potentially, only interesting for like a very small segment of people, and try to do your best to give that like mainstream appeal. So how do you like wrestle with all that stuff?
That's a good question. I think the happy hour idea is a little more digestible as just, I don't want to say passive, but more of just like an enjoyable listen to where we don't get hung up on really technical stuff. And it's more of an end of the week, just sort of like sitting down with your buddies, like shooting the breeze. Hey, how was your week? What was going on? Oh, hey, let's talk real quick about like China and what's going on there with like regulations or mining or whatever. I think the biggest struggle though is still trying to condense everything into like, usually we try to get it under 50 minutes, but I mean, this office, we could talk for 2.5 hours if we really wanted to. And even then we're still like, all right, let's wrap things up here. But I do like that format, and I got to give a lot of credit to Colin and to Rod and everybody else who's been involved, because they meet up ahead of time and sort of break down like what's important to talk about, what's fun to talk about, where can we trim the fat? Like, we don't want to get like too far down this rabbit hole on this thing. And I think the rotating moderators moving forward. So I don't think it's always going to be Colin. It might not always be Rod, but we'll kind of like rotate people in. And so far they've done a really good job of just keeping things moving, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and then I would just add, I did say as technical usually as these conversations are, there is always something to talk about in Bitcoin, and so maybe it's a blessing and a curse, just like how much detail there really is to get into.
Yeah, and I think even beyond the technical stuff, there's so much to talk about just philosophy-wise. So I think in our last episode, we spent 10 minutes talking about how Bitcoin would be integrated into space travel and colonizing Mars and setting up an economy on Mars.
Yeah.
So it's like,
you got to get there.
We're going.
Yeah.
But I think that's why Bitcoin Happy Hour is fun, because it's an end of the week thing. We're going to put it out every Friday morning. So it's like, if you got tired of all the, scratching and clawing on crypto Twitter that week, give us a listen and just kick back and forget about the week. I think it's a good, kind of like avenue for that.
Nice. Well, do your best on the back end to make this podcast interesting, captivating, and a nice summary for people. Thanks so much for coming in and giving that kind of different video perspective onto the podcast here. Anything I didn't ask about that you'd want people to know?
I think the only thing really is we have Vlad over in Romania just knocking out interviews left and right. So that's sort of what I've been doing on the back end as well, sort of working with Vlad to ingest the videos and sort of give him pointers and, get him equipment and just like get things like moving streamlined a little bit better. But Vlad's crushing it. And we got a lot more of those coming down the pike too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to get you back in here to talk about the whole like video interview format, which is a completely different beast than the product review.
Yeah.
Also has its interesting challenges in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah.
Great. So we'll look forward to that. And thanks again for coming in, Graham.
Thanks, Peter.
The Bitcoin Magazine Weekly Bits podcast is a BTC Media produced podcast on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. It was produced and edited by my guest today, Graham Peterson, as well as David Hollerith. To see the videos we discussed in this episode, visit youtube.com/Bitcoin Magazine. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and don't be shy around the like button. You can find more engaging podcasts over at letstalkbitcoin.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at the LTB Network for all the latest episodes. Be sure to subscribe to the show on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. Finally, I want to remind listeners about the upcoming Bitcoin 2020 conference being held in San Francisco from March 27th to 28th next year. It's already shaping up to be the biggest Bitcoin conference of all time, and I know there's a ton more that hasn't been announced yet. You can learn more at bitcoin2020conference.com. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next week.